Hi, this is Chatboxing. I'm Sean, and it's a quick post-fight video for the George Groves Jamie Cox fight last night, and also early thoughts for the George Groves Chris Eubank fight coming up in January. Good fight last night. Good fight while it lasted. Four quite action-packed rounds. Jamie Cox, I hadn't really seen that much of him, to be honest. I'd seen a couple of his fights. He looked good, but I mean, I hadn't really heard particularly of anyone that he'd really fought. He fought at quite a low level. He's obviously a good amateur, but he does have quite good skills, and he's quick. He's a good puncher. You know, he's got quite bad intentions with his punches. Do you know what I mean? He's not messing about. He's got a good jab, but he swings big punches in on you, and he's got quite fast hands. So he was a threat to George Groves, but I didn't really see him beating him. I hadn't seen enough from him to think that he could, make this much of a step up, especially bearing in mind like the size as well. Like, George Groves has been a super middleweight for a long time. But yeah, he came in and did quite a good job. I think George Groves won the first round. I think he was picking him off with quite good punches, and he's, had the range control quite well. He did, as the fight went on, start to get pushed back a little bit onto the ropes by Jamie Cox, which, it's kind of happened to him a few times recently. Like, he's been kind of put onto the back foot a bit more than he used to be. He doesn't. I mean, I've heard quite a few people say that he's slowed down a little bit, like with his hands, also his feet. He is still quite quick on his feet, and he does have decent footwork, but yeah, he's possibly slightly slower than he used to be, and maybe not quite as explosive. But Jamie Cox is quite fast coming in. Do you know what I mean? He kind of dips down and he's aggressive. So, he's willing to take a couple of punches to get inside, and he did that against Groves, and he did manage to push him back. It didn't really hurt him, but he hit him with a good left hook. George Groves, I think, reacted quite well. He sort of pushed him back onto the other rope, give him a good couple of digs to the body himself. Another time when he was in there, he managed to like roll him, turn him off the ropes. So he dealt with it quite well, and he's quite elusive on the ropes, Groves. He's sort of ducking and diving and slipping a few. Comes back with, fights his way out of there. I don't really think Chris Eubank's going to try and, get him onto those ropes, and if he does, he's throwing. Probably, I don't know if he's like got harder puncher than Jamie Cox. I mean, they're probably both. I mean, in terms of what they've proven, they're probably, maybe you could say Chris Eubank's a slightly harder puncher, but there's probably not that much in it. They both got quite fast hands, but I think Chris Eubank is a lot harder to hit himself. So when he's having these exchanges with people, he tends to come off best. Would that happen with George Groves? I don't know, but I definitely see him as more of a threat. I don't think George Groves wants to be on the ropes as much as he was in this fight. George Groves hit him with some good counters. He sort of lined him up well for that. He didn't really use the jab that much. I mean, he did a little bit, but mainly he was sort of walking onto that right hand, like the straight right hand, or he was getting him with those body shots. I mean, the sort of uppercut was like a hook to the body, but he was getting him with quite a few body shots there with the hook as a counter. So that was how he was fighting, and he was doing it quite well. He was hitting him with some hard counters. So all in all, for me, a good performance from George Groves. I expect him to win. I didn't expect it to be that quick. To be honest, Jamie Cox showed quite a good chin. He did take some good punches in that. I mean, the body shot to put him down, it looked pretty powerful. And, I don't know if he just couldn't get up or he decided he didn't really fancy it, he couldn't really breathe. But either way, it was a solid body punch. And that's something that George Groves commented that he'd been working on with Shane McGuigan. He's been working the body a lot more, which might be quite useful against Eubank. Not that Eubank looks particularly vulnerable to the body either, but he does look like he's got a very, very good chin. Obviously, we all know like what his dad was like. We've heard all the sparring stories of him. Like he's fighting against some heavyweight from Cuba. And there's nothing to suggest that he doesn't have a very good chin. And I've never seen him hurt in a fight. I've never seen him really rocked at all. Admittedly, he hasn't really fought against anyone who's that big a puncher. I mean, he fought Arthur Abraham, but he was quite past his best. in terms like physically and also in terms of desire as well. So going up against George Groves, who's definitely going to be the most dangerous puncher, all things considered, that he's fought, and a more dynamic puncher as well. George, he was getting Jamie Cox with some good combinations, good counters. He's still got a lot of, bad intentions with his punches. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult one to really pick. I mean, I'm not going to make my prediction now, but as it stands, I mean, I do see this as a real 50-50. I think George Groves obviously has more experience. I think he obviously has. He's fought. I mean, he's only lost to very, very good fighters. He lost to Carl Froch twice. One of them he got knocked out with one punch. That can happen. The first time was very controversial. He was very unlucky, really, that the referee stopped that fight. Although you could make the case that if it had gone on, it kind of looked a little bit like Carl Froch was going to get the stoppage anyway, but we don't know. I mean, he was very unlucky. In any case, Carl Froch is, one of the best super middleweights, definitely that the UK's ever had, arguably the world has ever seen. So, no real shame in that. He also lost to Badu Jack in a very, very close fight. Now, Badu Jack, now we're starting to realise how good he is. At the time we knew he was good, but now we realise that he's very, very good. In my opinion, he's one of the best in the world. Now, if I was into all this sort of pound for pound bollocks that people talk about, I'd probably have him up there in my list. Badu Jack, he's very, very good. So he fought him in America, and was it a split decision? I can't remember, but it was a very close fight, and it could have gone either way, really, from what I can remember. And if you compare that to the James DeGale fight, where Badu Jack beat the shit out of James DeGale, really. I know he didn't get the decision, but he battered him. I mean, for me, he won that fight clearly. So Badu Jack and Carl Froch are the only people that he's lost to. He beat James DeGale. He's been in with some good fighters, so he's a real step up for Chris Eubank. But he's obviously a lot fresher as well. George Groves has the advantage in experience, but he's obviously a lot fresher. He's young. He hasn't really taken that much punishment. He's very, very hungry. Works very, very hard. I mean, he literally lives in the gym. Do you know what I mean? He's there. He'll have a fight. 10 minutes later, he's in there, like, do you know what I mean? Doing sparring. You know what I mean? He's a nutter. He loves it. So he is fresh. He's got that energy. He's got definitely more stamina than George Groves. So that's, and the work rate. That's the kind of key that, when I look at it and think, yeah, how Eubank will win, his big advantage for me is his stamina, work rate, and probably his toughness. Now, I think George Groves, I don't think he's as tough as Eubank. I don't think he's got the chin that Eubank has got. I think he's a harder puncher. So, I think he's bigger, stronger, harder puncher. But Eubank, I think, is tougher. So, it's difficult to really see. Obviously, George Groves is very clever in the ring. Eubank, he's just sort of all action. George Groves has obviously been around for quite a long time, been in there. He's had his wins, had his losses, so he's very experienced. You'd have to think that he's got the higher ring IQ in terms of experience. Now, Chris Eubank does, like George Groves, seem like a natural fighter, but that's definitely an advantage in Groves' favour. Just that, all the sort of trials and tribulations that he's had. I don't know. I'm not making my predictions yet. Most people, I think, are leaning towards Eubank. I think the general consensus is that his work rate, his stamina, and the fact that how tough he is going to override Groves' sort of power advantage. That George Groves potentially, as the fight wears on, will just sort of run out of steam, and Eubank will either win on points, or it'll stop him late if George Groves just can't keep up that pace. I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't really know. We'll have to see. I've never seen Eubank in there with someone like George Groves. George Groves, he hits you very hard, and he's gonna. Eubank is quite reckless. He comes in, launches in with like big uppercuts and stuff, and like flying in quite often off balance. Now George Groves will make him pay. Now he fought Billy Joe Saunders, and Billy Joe Saunders has a much better defence than George Groves. He's much slicker, he's much more difficult to hit, and he's much faster as well. And Eubank wasn't able to beat him. So George Groves doesn't have quite those attributes, but he's bigger, stronger, and he's going to make him pay a lot more when he misses. Like you, BJ Saunders can make him pay to a certain extent, but he couldn't really get the respect of him. I think George Groves, when he starts hitting you with those straight right hands and the body work as well, if he's really sort of stepping up his body work, it'd be interesting to see how Eubank could deal with that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. This is the fight that I've wanted to see for a very long time. I'm a big fan of both of them. It's kind of like a sort of crossroads fight. Is George Groves as good as he used to be? Is Chris Eubank ready for it yet? Well, we'll see. And we're not going to have to wait too long for it. So, yeah, for me, whoever wins this tournament, if it's, I mean, I don't want to just assume that it's going to be an Englishman, but with Groves, Eubank, and Callum Smith in the tournament, you've got to think it's quite likely that an Englishman is going to win. For me, whoever does win that, if they have to beat the other two, will be the number one in the country in terms of current form and what they've achieved. James de Gale is going to need to fight the winner to get his place back, to get his spot back as a number one for me. But yeah, I'll make a proper prediction, a breakdown near the time, but that's how I see it at the moment. So yeah, good fight. Congratulations, George Groves. Fair play, Jamie Cox as well. He gave a good account of himself, and yeah, I definitely think he can be back. This is like he was on quite a big stage here. He showed that he's got skills and he can kind of, he did get knocked out in the fourth round, but it was a big step up, and also the size as well. So I think that he can kind of build his way back up and have a pretty decent career. So yeah, let me know what you lot think, and thank you very much for watching.